Although this happened when I was 7, I still have nightmares about it today. I was never really into doll stuff, more of a tomboy type. So when my stepdad brought me home a huge story handcrafted dollhouse from an antique fair, I was both surprised and equally amazed. I quickly fell in love with it. I would play with it for hours with small dolls I built for myself just so I could act out tiny family dramas in the dollhouse for fun. The true drama began one night when the dollhouse began playing with me. It must have been the middle of the night when I was woke up by the sound of a quiet scratching. It was near pitch dark in my bedroom, but I could dimly make out a few things from the bit of light coming in through my window. Wide awake now, I stared out into the darkness, listening. Again, I could just make out the sound of scratching from the other side of the room. I sat up and focused on where I thought the sound might be coming from. Scritch, scritch. It came again, and I could swear it was coming from the direction of the dollhouse, which sat off in the far corner of the room. I waited. Scritch, scritch. Suddenly I heard the louder sound of paper tearing. I leaped from my bed and turned the light on, and it was probably a half second, and the sound stopped. Cautiously, I approached the dollhouse, peering inside. I didn't immediately see anything in there or anything different, so I knelt down and examined the rooms more carefully. At first I didn't see anything. Then along the edge of the paper door frames, I saw small tears along the edge. Those were definitely not there before. I slept the rest of the night with the lights on and didn't hear any more unusual sounds. The next morning, I told my dad about it. At first he teased me that I was just imagining it, but he could see that I was upset and totally serious about it. So he suggested we get a nightlight. I kind of felt stupid given that I was 7 now and not really prone to being afraid of the dark anymore. Then he suggested that he could even hook up the dollhouse itself to be a nightlight by adding some wiring and a small light bulb. That sounded good to me. He spent a few hours in the afternoon and fixed it up. That evening, when I was getting ready for bed, I did appreciate the soft glow coming from the antique. It really made me feel better, and I fell asleep in no time at all. A few hours later, I awoke to the sound of scratching. I listened for a few minutes, then it stopped. Still laying down, I turned to face the dollhouse. I could see the light was coming from inside it, the soft rays that filled the corner of the room with harsh shadows. I just laid there, staring at the dollhouse, waiting for the sound to start again. It didn't. Instead, something crossed through the light, moving the shadows around. From inside the dollhouse. A shiver ran down my back as the light shifted again. Something was moving around in there. Freaking out, I turned my back to the dollhouse, pulled the covers over my head, and shut my eyes tight. I had to be imagining it. I forced myself to keep my eyes closed and ignore it. I started humming to myself in an attempt to distract me, and just hoped I could fall back asleep. Eventually I did. A sharp pain in my side woke me up. I opened my eyes, but couldn't see much. There was no light in my room. The light in the dollhouse was out, and I could barely see again from the light from the window. Even worse, I couldn't move. My arms and legs were tied down. Black strands tightly wound across my body and held me in place in my bed. I tried to sit up, but couldn't. With some effort, I was able to move my head to look down. Horrified, I saw several tiny humanoid creatures scurrying across me. They were thin, gray in color and all disjointed, like tiny doll figures, but they had no faces. Terrible and nasty. One even stood right in the center of my chest. I freaked. I started screaming. Not in the "hey dad, I need a drink of water" sort of way, but in a blood-curdling, "I think I'm going to die" scream. The creatures quickly darted off me, after what seemed like minutes, but was only a few seconds. My dad burst into the room, turning on the light. His face went white, seeing me tied up on the bed. He looked at me in confusion. I just whispered one word: "Dollhouse." Immediately he started smashing it with his feet and his fist. Pieces were flying everywhere. As he broke up the dollhouse, the sticky black strands snapped and disappeared. Once the antique was destroyed enough and I was free, I ran sobbing into his arms. He held me tight and we both ran out of the room. In the morning, we burned the remains of the dollhouse in the fireplace. He apologized for buying the dollhouse, but I know it wasn't his fault. We don't really talk about it. I've never gotten over this, but we've also never seen those creatures again. I hope we never will. My girlfriends and I often jog in the evenings after work. Running helps us to get rid of stress, stay in shape, and even meet guys. We often run into new people as we travel our typical circuit around the neighborhood. Our medium-sized town is relatively safe, so we don't worry about being attacked or anything like that. So I never expected to have such a terrifying incident, but I did. And I'll never forget this day that I literally ran into a corpse baby. It was a beautiful fall evening when we headed out for a run. We typically run a 3-mile circuit around the neighborhood. This takes us down several side streets, through the downtown area, past several small shops, and back to the residential areas. A quick loop that allows us to be seen as well as check out the activity in our town, all while getting a bit of exercise, you could say. On this particular night, we had seen the usual people out and about as we ran past, but on this one block, we ran past someone we hadn't seen before. An odd-looking woman pushing a baby stroller. It's not unusual for us to see families or young mothers out for a walk. It was just not someone we had seen before. Since we were in mid-jog, I didn't think anything about it. We just kept running. We finished our run by looping back, and we all ended up at my friend's house. We all talked for a few minutes, saying our goodbyes and making plans for the next day. Our other friend got in her car to drive home, and my friend headed up the sidewalk to go into her house. My house is about 6 blocks away from hers, so I planned to just jog a bit more to get back home. I took off running down the side street. The sun was quickly setting and the streetlights had come on. I wasn't really scared, but I also didn't want to be out after dark either. I rounded the corner into the next block and started running down the sidewalk. I could see someone ahead in the dim light. It was the strange woman with an odd stroller. Now you must know that I have a thing for puppies and babies. If I see one, I just have to stop and say hi. So when I saw the stroller directly in my path, I started to slow down and check it out. I quickly closed the distance between me and the woman. As I approached, I flashed my best smile and slowed down to a walk. Nice evening, don't you think? The woman looked up at me in confusion and didn't say anything. I wasn't deterred in the least. How are you tonight? Do you mind if I say hi to your baby? She just shrugged. By now, I had stopped next to the stroller. I walked around to look on the baby. I froze. Inside the stroller was this hideous baby. Its skin was pale gray, its dark lips curled into a terrible line on its face. The eyes looked to be sewn shut. It was horrible. I thought for sure it was dead. But suddenly, it reached up for me with a tiny black hand. I totally freaked out, screeching in terror. I took off running full stream towards the house. I didn't even look back. As soon as I got home, I called the police. They came and took my report and searched the neighborhood for the woman I described, but they never found anything. That was the last time I ran alone. Now, every time I talk about going for a jog, everyone teases me. But I know what I saw, and I know it was real. The corpse baby is real. Not too long ago, I was a junior in high school. 3 of my friends and I stayed late at school that night after our school's Halloween party. One of my friends brought in a Ouija board, and we wanted to give it a shot and see if we could contact some spirits. It wasn't a brilliant idea, but we were looking for an adventure. My friend suggested that we sit under a big maple tree. So we did and continued with our sketchy ritual. All 4 of us sat down. Setting up the game, we started talking about how there have always been rumors at our school about it being haunted even before we attended. We all looked forward to some kind of paranormal contact because none of us had ever experienced any hauntings for ourselves. It was Halloween, and we all wanted to get spooked. Under the maple tree, our only light came from the school's dim-lit mercury light nearby, illuminating the surroundings. Playing around with each other, we joked by making our best impressions of our scariest voices. We set the Ouija board in place between us. We all watched a lot of movies and had a good idea of how it worked. We all proceeded to place the tips of our fingers from one hand on top of the planchette. We sat there looking at each other until one of us said, "What's next?" Was there really a right way to start a sketchy ritual, I thought to myself. If there were instructions, we didn't care to look in the box because it was too dim lit to read them anyway. We just started asking it questions. "Is anyone here? Please talk to us." One of the girls joined in. Still nothing. No movement on the board. One of my friends jerked the planchette and it startled Sydney. She screamed and we all laughed. We decided to give it another shot. We all placed our index fingers on the planchette once more and asked, "If there was anyone there, we would like to talk to you." When we were set to give up, a big gust of wind was breaking through the tree we were sitting on. I remember thinking, we just made contact, and I was a little scared. My friend sitting beside me said, "My mom warned me about playing with forces we don't know." We continued, "Did you die here? Are you the headless teacher that haunts the school? Are you a hottie?" My friend giggled. At this point, we were all throwing random stupid questions and didn't get any response. "This is bullshit. I don't want to do this anymore," my friend said, irritated. We were all thinking the same. Just then, a group of dogs from the neighboring house started barking at us through the chain-link fence. These dogs were growling and showing teeth. We all screamed and, without finishing the ritual, bolted right out. We didn't all see each other again until after Halloween break. After telling them about what happened to me that same night after messing around with the Ouija board, to my concern, they had a strange occurrence which happened to them as well. Sydney said that when she was walking up to her house, she realized that she never took her house key with her to the party, and she may not be able to get in. It wasn't really a big deal since she could see the light on in the house telling her that her brother was home. She knocked on the door, and when her brother opened the door, his face turned white. He swore she was already home. He claimed to have seen her walk in a while ago and that she looked really tired and saw her head straight to bed. Creepy, but no need to freak ourselves out, was all we thought. Besides, her brother must have just been tired and seeing things. But then my other friend started telling us about an encounter she had that Halloween night. She was going up to her room when the light started flickering as she was ascending the staircase. Your typical horror movie visuals. Shrug it off to faulty wiring. But just then she saw the door to her room open and a dark figure stepped out and stood atop the staircase. She couldn't make out the entity's face, but she recounted that she couldn't move and felt utter dread as the figure stared down at her. No way. My best friend, who just joined in the conversation, said in disbelief, "Something happened to me as well." He recalled that he was sleeping one night when he woke up feeling really uncomfortable. He described his vision as having TV-like static and a feeling of heaviness surrounding him. He looked around the room, and that's when he saw a bloody, charred face grinning at him through the window. I still don't have an explanation why those things happened to us, but thank God nothing happened after that. I never played or got near an Ouija board ever since.